Greetings and welcome to BREC. It is my pleasure to serve as your facilitator for this orientation. I am Dr. Nicole Payne-Jack, and I serve as the Human Resources Training and Development Manager. Today's agenda consists of 4 parts. I will introduce a few of our executive team members just so that you can see them by face and by name and which departments they represent. I will review the orientation packet that you should have been in receipt of via email prior to attending this orientation, some rules, regulations, and policies to get you all started at BREC. In part 2, I will review employee benefits for both part-time employees and full-time employees, our rules, regulations around how we communicate on the web and via social media. Part 3 will consist of health, safety, and risk management guidelines. And lastly, our user guidelines created in our information technology department, a review of NeoGov Onboard, and an introduction to our learning management system known as Learn. There may be additional trainings that are assigned to you, whether they are mandated by the state of Louisiana, whether it is a BREC requirement, or if it is a requirement based on your job position. It will be your responsibility to make sure to complete all orientation courses that are being assigned to you. Now, with your pre-orientation documents that you should have already been in receipt of, I'll go over the information in your orientation packet. You should have already reviewed your employee handbook as well as the health, safety, and risk management handbook in NeoGov Onboard. If you have not, then make sure that you complete those individual tasks, as well as signing receipt electronically that you have been given those documents. There is a complete brochure on customer service that's also in your pre-orientation packet. Recently, commission approved policies and the most recent park bench newsletter. Keep in mind, we're providing you with this information so that you can be well informed of what the expectations are as a new employee, as a rehired employee, as a promoted employee, or maybe even as a transfer. So it is your responsibility to read cover to cover all of the information that has been provided to you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your immediate supervisor, or you can always contact me for any additional information. Now, your orientation package should have started with a new employee welcome directly from our superintendent, Corey Wilson. There were a number of BREC handouts that are pertinent just to get started with the agency. We have provided to you a copy of our mission statement along with our vision and our 10 core values. There is a department directory that was also a part of that orientation packet, so that if you have questions that are specific to a department, you can feel free to reach out to them via email, via telephone as well. The commission approved holiday schedule for this year, as well as CIP holiday schedule, were included. BREC eSuite instructions so that you can activate your employee portal. This is where you will be able to access in real time all of your check stubs, your pay information, if you need to update any personnel records, and even some of your benefit information is also stored in the portal. The 2018-2019 BREC compensation benefit study results are also provided to you in that orientation packet, as well as some frequently asked questions if that pertains to your individual position. NeoGov Onboard and Learn FAQs, the National Recreation and Parks Association Premier Membership for full-time employees, and for everyone. If you are interested in joining the Employee Staff Fund, there's some information in there on what it's all about and what you have to do to sign yourselves up. This information is provided to you as additional resources. So make sure that you take the time to read through it thoroughly and ask any appropriate questions. Now, after you have completed this orientation, you will be in receipt of an IT welcome letter. Very important that you follow each instruction on that welcome letter. This will allow you to be able to activate your BREC accounts, to access your emails, to get into NeoGov Onboard and Learn after orientation. I'll also give you some screenshots just so that you can be able to see it and follow along with those instructions. I'll give you a copy of these orientation presentation slides. just for your reference for the future. And any assigned courses that you will be responsible for within the next 2 weeks, we will make sure in the training and development department that we provide that to you. Your responsibility will be to make sure that you get all of these requirements completed within your first 2 weeks of hire. So let's get started with part one. In an introduction of the agency, as well as some of our key players, it's important that we go all the way back 73 plus years to understand how is it that Breck got to its success of where it is today. So in this 30-minute video, which I won't play now, this will be your responsibility to, in your free time, make sure to review it. It's on our YouTube channel, so you could easily just click on the link in the PowerPoint slides, or you can access it once you've activated your NeoGov Learn account. It's a course that we've made available in our learning management system. I find that it's very important that in order for us to understand where we are, we have to go all the way back to the beginning just to get a better appreciation of some of the adversities the agency has been able to successfully get through. And then you can understand how important your contribution to the organization will be. So again, I'm Nicole. I am the Training and Development Manager, and Kathleen McCutcheon is our Learning Management System Training Specialist. Any learning and development needs you may have as a new employee at Breck, we are your go-tos. Of course, you have access to your immediate supervisors, but when it comes to training opportunities, I will give you our contact information, so please feel free to reach out to us. Now, in starting with any organization, I find it very important to understand why the company exists and what it says that it's going to do, just to make sure that if I'm going to be a part of it, I can recognize whether or not it is really living out what's in writing. So Breck's mission statement is to contribute to a healthier, more vibrant community by providing exceptional parks, open spaces, and recreational experiences for all of East Baton Rouge Parish. Now, we didn't say mediocre parks. We didn't say just some place that you could go, but you really don't know what you're going to expect. The expectation is that you're going to get the best of the best whenever you have an interaction with Breck as an agency. So that means as employees, it is our responsibility to live, to breathe this mission statement. Even moving forward into the bigger picture, our vision states that we got to provide an extraordinary system of parks, open spaces, and facilities that engages the parish's unique natural and cultural landscape to enrich parish life by providing diverse and memorable recreation experiences. Now, what exactly does all of that mean? We want every patron, everyone who encounters any of our Breck services or any of our Breck employees to have such an amazing experience that not only will they come back, but they will then tell others. And then positive word of mouth communication will allow us to be able to better serve others based on what those needs are. Now, in order for us to be able to do that, we must adopt into our 10 core values. I'm noticing here that excellence is at the top, striving to provide high quality state-of-the-art experiences. If you were to think back on the very last agency, organization that you may have patronized, I mean, you've spent your hard-earned money, wouldn't you want the service to be of a high caliber of excellence so that you know that you're getting what you paid for and then some? We find it very important in a service-oriented environment that in order for us to actualize these core values, we have to definitely fulfill our mission and our vision. But we can't do so as an agency if it's not for our very skilled employees in being able to facilitate those processes. Now, our parks and facilities, they're massive. If you got a chance to look through some of your pre-orientation packet documents, there is a brochure that has a layout of all 181 parks, our special facilities, some of our amenities, the entire over 6,000 acres of land. So what I would recommend, just to get more familiar with all of the amenities and the leisure activities, maybe take a field trip. Take that map with you, and whenever you see that Breck sign, Share that information with others so that we can continue to enlarge our population of patrons, and we can continue to do what our patrons are expecting in terms of meeting their needs. Now, at this moment, I'd like you all to just pat yourselves on the back. You have made one of the best decisions in joining this amazing organization. And I don't say that lightly, but we've been nationally recognized. We've been awarded a couple times the National Gold Medal Award for Excellence in our field, in our industry of park and recreation management. Now, every year, we have also been a finalist. Now, what that means, and I know you may not think like, okay, so what's the big deal about being a finalist? Out of all park and recreation agencies in the entire United States, we have been deemed the best of the best. That is something to be extremely proud of. Not only that, but we've also been accredited year after year for our excellence in how we operate and how we commit to serving the communities. So the Commission for Accreditation of Park and Recreation Agencies, known as CAPRA, they come down every 5 years to Baton Rouge. They want to make sure that all of our T's are crossed and all of our I's are dotted. We have that distinction of being an outstanding organization. Now, our BREC Commission is our sole governing body, meaning that these volunteer advisory board members help us in making the final decisions on how we're able to be as great as we are. If you are interested in seeing how that magic works, the BREC Commission meetings are typically the fourth Thursday of every month at 5 o'clock in the administration building in the commission room. It's open to the public. So I highly recommend that as a BREC employee, you take some time and visit one of those meetings so that you can really understand how it is that we are able to do what we do, at least from the back end of things. Now, we have a number of departments, 10 departments and divisions of how things really operate from a procedural standpoint. So here are our who's who at BREC. In the middle here, you see our superintendent, Corey Wilson. You may or may not have had an opportunity to meet him in person. On the left-hand side is Reed Richard. He's our assistant superintendent of planning and construction engineering. Brandon Smith, our assistant superintendent of recreation programs and special facilities. At the top left-hand corner is Anitra Boykin. She is our newly hired chief legal officer. Stephen Knight is the director of IT. On the bottom left-hand corner, Stephanie Trim. She's my immediate supervisor, the director of HR. And Lester Rainey is our director of finance. Now that you've seen their faces, if you have an opportunity to visit with them, whether it is virtually or in person, you can at least recognize who these great individuals are. They are our executive team. In addition to Andrea Roberts, she's our chief operating officer. Mike Raby, director of golf. Cheryl Michelet is our director of communications. Phil Frost, the director of the zoo, and Ray Harold Lawson, director of park operations. Our purpose of employment is to make sure that we are hiring the best of the best and using public tax dollars appropriately. So our job as an agency is to make sure that we get individuals such as yourself through the door. We are an equal opportunity employer, meaning that if you are minimally eligible for the jobs that have been advertised, then you will have the same opportunity as anyone else to be able to apply, interview if you get to that stage, and then ultimately to be hired as a member of the team. With this equal opportunity, we recruit and employ applicants for their qualifications, whether or not they are a good fit within our organization, without discriminating or harassing based on any protected class by the federal or state government. So for any employee that may feel as if they have been discriminated or harassed, we do have an official complaint process, an entire system so that every person can feel as if they are supported and actually be supported. Now, there are a number of career opportunities. If you are interested in moving up the ladder or maybe even moving laterally within your department or across departments, if you are eligible, or if there's an opportunity for us to improve or to help you to increase your skill sets, the sky is the limit. So any of our other policies and career opportunities that you may be interested in or have a few more questions about, just for the sake of time, we won't go over every detail. But remember, as I said in the introduction, it is your responsibility as a new employee at Breck to read the book. And the book that I'm referring to is your employee handbook. So any information about recruitment and how selections are made, anti-nepotism policy, what our age requirements are, how the process of background check works. It's all in the book. We are an at-will employer in the state of Louisiana, so pretty much no one is handcuffed to their chairs and are forced to stay with any organization. So if you feel as if this is not a good fit, and or on the other side of the table, if as an agency, we find that you may not be a good fit, then termination can happen at any time with or without notice or with or without cause. And that means on both sides of the relationship. Now, keep in mind that every employee has a specific appointment. So you are typically either a core full-time employee, meaning that you work at least 40 hours a week with full benefits, or you are a member of our auxiliary staff and you are a part-time employee working about 29 hours a week with some benefits. Not the extent of the full benefits of full-time employees, but when we get to the benefits section, I will make sure to distinguish between the two. Our seasonal appointments are typically during holiday time or during the summer months. So they are at 40 hours a week, up to 5 months with no benefits, as you can experience with the full-time or part-time staff. It's our philosophy that everyone is paid equitably, depending on your skill sets, depending on the market, depending on the situation within the organization and what our needs may be. So our job in human resources in the agency is to attract, retain, and motivate employees by offering consistent pay, by making sure that everyone is paid in a fair manner. So how you are placed within your position and your salary that you will receive, well, it really just depends on what your qualifications and your skill sets are. So there's an executive team, there are salaried exempt employees, non-exempt employees, and part-time employees. Salary, hourly, or commission instructors. Now, everyone does have a supervisor. Either you are aware of who your supervisor is at this moment because you've already been introduced to them, or I would add that to your checklist after orientation to make sure that you at least have a conversation with your immediate supervisor so that not only can you meet them and know what those expectations are, but to allow them to provide the guidance and the training that you may need to be the best employee that you can possibly be. All employees report to an immediate supervisor, and everybody's supervisor has a supervisor. So make sure that you utilize our open door policy. If you have a question, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Make sure that you are reaching out to the appropriate person. And if that individual doesn't have the answer for you, then there are a number of different resources that you can tap into. If you have any input or any feedback that you would allow us to be able to use, maybe to consider to make the service to you as a new employee better, you have to express in an appropriate manner and let us know if there are any deficiencies or if there's a better way that we can serve you. Now, employees, at least full-time employees, will have to undergo an introductory period. Think of it as sort of the honeymoon phase in any relationship. It is a 6-month probation trial period, just so that you can make sure that this is the right decision that you've made for yourself, and your supervisor can have an opportunity to have conversations with you on what their expectations are and whether or not you are successfully meeting those expectations. At the end of your 6-month probationary period, if you are a full-time employee, then you will be officially appointed into your full-time position. Now, let's just say worst case scenario, there are some deficiencies. There are some areas that maybe in a performance standpoint that need to be worked on. Your probationary period can actually be extended, but just really depends on the assessment from your supervisor. There are many opportunities for promotions within the organization. So if you are qualified for a promoted position and you've been with the agency for a decent amount of time and you've shown through your performance that maybe the promotion will be an even better fit, you will go through the same process that you went through to get to orientation today. So you'll complete a new application with all the detailed information of your skill sets, your resume. You may or may not be called in for an interview if you met those minimum qualifications. And you also have to do a drug screen and a physical just as you completed in order for you to be hired as the employee that you are today. Now, if there's an opportunity for you to transfer, maybe to work in a different location, maybe different work hours or different conditions of your employment, that's an opportunity as well. Now, we do ask, just as a professional courtesy, that if you find that this is not the right fit for you, and maybe there's a different life circumstance that suits you better, if you choose to resign, we do ask that you do so in writing and at least give your supervisor a 2 weeks heads up, just so that we can make sure that your station is being covered and we will have enough time to be able to replace your position as you are leaving the organization. Now, we've not experienced layoffs in the sense that there's a mass layoff within BREC and then no one is able to work. Temporary seasonal full-time employees are technically laid off at the end of their contract period, i.e. the end of the summer program. Or if you are working on an assignment or it is project-based, then you already knew ahead of time when the end of that assignment would actually come to a close. If there is a situation where while you're employed at BREC, your performance is not exactly where we would expect it to be, we have a progressive discipline system as well as a complaint resolution process so that your first infraction, depending on how severe it may be, should not be immediate grounds for termination automatically. We will allow for a written verbal warning, just to give you a heads up, and this will come from your supervisor or someone in management to make you aware of what our observations are and where there may be some deficiencies. Now, if this behavior continues and there's no progress, nothing is changing, then it could lead to suspension or maybe demotion, a reduction in your pay, maybe reassigned. Maybe the situation is that you're not placed in the best fit for your skill sets. There may be some level of reprimand, and typically this will happen, depending on the infraction, before it is a matter of termination. Your hours of work will definitely be determined by your department, depending on what the scope of services that you're providing, what the needs of your departments are. All non-exempt full-time employees are required to take a 1-hour lunch break. Now, when you take that lunch break, if you are a full-time employee, that's a conversation that you will have with your immediate supervisor. And you may be required to work some evenings, some weekend hours, but it really just depends on the needs of the agencies. It is a typical scenario that you will have that conversation ahead of time before your schedule is created, just to make sure that you and your supervisor and team members are on the same page. We do allow overtime for non-exempt employees, but it has to be prior approved. Now, why is that very important? We don't have the autonomy as non-exempt full-time employees to get close to our 40 hours in the middle of the week because we've worked extra hours and now there's 2 days left in the week. So we take it upon ourselves to work an extra 16 hours. It has to be prior approved for the simple fact that everybody's salary and our time is budgeted for the entire calendar year. So the money has to then be allocated and it has to come from somewhere. So prior approval based on the need, based on special projects, you'll again have that conversation with your supervisor. Now, executive and exempt employees are not eligible for overtime, but compensatory time can be earned with approval from your department heads. Every BREC employee is responsible for keeping up with their own individual time. We've moved over into a brand new time and attendance system, and it's called Nova Time. So you'll hear more about it once you get to your site. If you are an hourly employee, you are required to punch in and punch out either on a time clock, on some electronic device, or on a computer. Get more guidance from your supervisor on which option is preferred within your department. We are not allowed to punch in for others. meaning that you will have your own designated login to be able to punch in, clock out in real time. So just make sure that you're completing all the appropriate form work, that you have the appropriate access that you need. Otherwise, it could negatively impact you being paid on time. Regular attendance and punctuality are very important for all positions, not just for a particular setting. So if you are absent for 3 consecutive work days and no one knows where you are, no one has approved for you to be off, meaning your supervisor, we're going to consider that you've abandoned your position and that you no longer work at BREC. So very important that when you know that you are going to be absent, or if you are going to be tardy, that you reach out to your immediate supervisor in whichever their preferred method of communication is, at least by the time that you are supposed to start your shift. Now, we totally understand that things happen, and sometimes things happen that are totally out of our control. But the moment that you know that you may not be able to attend work that day, or you may be tardy, just reach out, let someone know what's going on. If you are ill or if you are suffering with some type of disability, you have to report periodically with updates to your supervisor just so that we are aware of when you may be able to return to your post. If you are out on an illness for 3 or more consecutive days, it is required that you return with a written doctor's release, just to make sure that physically, mentally, you are capable to be able to return to the agency in the same condition before you left. And we do have the right to request any validation of any reason that you've been absent for an extended amount of time. Now, if your absences and your tardies are becoming a habit and they are extremely excessive, it could lead to termination. So make sure that you are paying attention to your absences and your tardiness and just staying on top of it. Now, we do have an attendance point system. It is a no-fault policy, but just for the purpose of making sure that we are tracking and keeping it consistent and fair across the board of when there are unscheduled absences or tardiness, or if you are leaving your job posts earlier than you normally would have. Now, this is for full-time employees only. This does not include if you have pre-approved leave, such as family medical leave, any military leave, paternal leave, emergency leave, funeral, jury duty, those things of the like. Now, your attendance is tracked in this attendance point system by your supervisor for review purposes only. So if you keep racking up your attendance points, I will say that that will not be a good look at the end of your either probationary period or at the end of your annual for your review. So keep in track of your points that you may be accumulating. So in your employee handbook, we actually outline how many points will be accrued based on the type of infraction. So if you're absent for the entire day and you did not call, no one knows where you are, then you will accrue 3 points. If you call in, then that's 1 point. If you are late or if you leave work early and it's not something that was prior approved, if it's less than half a day, you'll get half a point. If it's more than half a day, you'll get a point. Please note, getting a lot of points is not a good deal. The moment that you are at, I'd say maybe at 6, which is more so the halfway point, that's a time to really have a conversation with your immediate supervisor. So maybe there are different arrangements that can be made if there's something going on your end that is preventing you from showing up on time or either showing up at all. When you reach 10 points, that is grounds for immediate termination. Now, for full-time employees, for new hires, we are evaluated at the end of a 6-month probationary period. Here are the ratings. There are 5 of them. Excellent, good, satisfactory, yes, that's where we want to be. If you have one of those 3 ratings in terms of your overall scoring on your performance evaluation, you will be granted official full-time status and be eligible for a merit increase at your annual review. Now, let's say that you are ranging in the needs improvement area. You will be placed on probation with a new review in 90 days. Unfortunately, unsatisfactory scoring will result in termination. Now, performance reviews are done annually. They are conducted from a year from the date that you were hired. So as I said before, excellent, good, that's where we want to be. Satisfactory, you will be ineligible for a promotion or a merit salary increase until your next annual review. So our target is to make sure that we're in that excellent and good range. Needs improvement, you'll be also ineligible for a merit increase, but you will receive a 90-day review. And of course, unsatisfactory will be grounds for termination. You do have an opportunity to appeal your overall score if you totally disagree with the assessment from your immediate supervisor, but good and excellent are not grounds to be able to appeal. Now, there are some procedural changes that recently happened a few months ago for full-time employees. So full-time employees are not eligible for a merit increase until after they have served 12 months from their date of hire. You still get your 6-month review, but you won't be eligible for that 3% increase until after your annual review. You must appeal within 10 days of receiving a response from your department director if there is some discrepancy and you disagree with what your overall assessment is. Satisfactory ratings will not receive a 90-day probationary review and will not be eligible for a merit increase until your next annual review. Now, if you're in the needs improvement rating area, you will still get a 90-day probationary review, but you won't be eligible for your merit increase until your next annual review. So our goal ultimately as full-time employees is to reach the good and the excellent categories as much as we possibly can. Now, for part-time employees, here are some procedural changes that have recently gone into effect. So who gets a performance review if you're a part-time employee? If you were hired after August 1st, 2019, which obviously you have, you will receive a review on your anniversary date. Who's eligible for a merit increase? Aha, so if you have worked more than 1,000 hours in that calendar year, you will get an increase of 3.3% depending on the results of your review. Remember, excellent and good, those are our target areas. Part-time employees who've worked less than 1,000 hours, you won't receive the review. You won't be eligible for the merit increase, but you may be eligible for step increases or a minimum living wage increase if that is the scenario. Everyone, part-time, full-time employees are rated on these 6 areas. So safety, punctuality, attendance, how you communicate, whether or not you're productive in the workplace. Are you really showing your ambassadorship when you're providing service in and out of the organization? And are you following the rules and the policies and regulations that have been put before you? The commission doesn't favor the idea of our full-time employees having outside jobs, but it is not illegal. It's also not unethical for you to moonlight. It's very important for you to understand the difference. You will learn more about moonlighting and the do's and the don'ts when you have completed the mandatory Louisiana governmental ethics course, which you'll find out more information about that towards the end of this orientation. If you have another job as a full-time employee, the goal is to make sure that BREC is the top priority. Now, what you do outside of your working hours and what you've committed to us as an agency, that is your business, as long as it doesn't interfere with your performance on the job. Now, this also goes for part-time employees because we do understand that if you are working part-time with BREC, you may actually have another part-time job. As long as there is a separation of your time, separation of your resources and your talents, then moonlighting can be considered acceptable. Every BREC employee is paid every other Friday. We're on a bi-weekly pay period. The pay period starts on Saturday and it ends on a Friday, and direct deposit is mandatory. So there is no opportunity for you to not have a checking account or to not have some banking institution that will deposit your funds in order for you to receive a paper check. So if you have not done so already, it is very important that you fill out your direct deposit form and make sure to get that over to Human Resources. All employees have to go some level of pay deductions. So whether that is state, federal income taxes or FICA, or if you're a part-time employee, it may be deferred compensation, or full-time employees, depending on which selection of benefits that you have chosen, Your retirement and your premium of your benefits will also be deducted from your biweekly paycheck, in addition to whichever portion BREC matches on both sides. Your BREC employee online self-service portal is an opportunity for you to set up an account using a personal email address and answering some security questions so that you can have full access in real time of all of your employee data, all of your benefit information, and your check stubs and tax documentation. Now, please note that any of your personnel records is always kept under lock and key. It is not our responsibility to share your personnel information unless you give us explicit written permission to be able to do so. Now, it is your responsibility to make sure that you let HR know if there are any personal information changes to your personnel file. If you move, if you change your marital status or add a family member, your telephone number changes, maybe you have additional education, your emergency contact may change, or your filing status for tax purposes may need to be updated. If you don't inform us, then we definitely will not be aware. But all of that information is kept under lock and key, and it is private. It is no supervisor's responsibility to ask for your private information, nor are we privy to it. Remember, I said that it is as a need to know, unless there's a third party, maybe court-ordered subpoena that we will have no other choice but to comply with, but no one can just have access to your information. So please note that it is need to know and or with your written explicit permission. So for our rules and regulations, now that we've gotten through some, let's get started at BREC information, I'm going to quickly go over some of the pertinent information that is important that every BREC employee understands before you really get started with your employment with the agency. So although we have policies, they're in writing, we have rules, we create regulations and procedures around those policies. We do have the right as an agency to change it, to terminate it, to update, to suspend any of our policies and procedures, whether it's a piece of it, whether it's all of it, with or without notice. It is our typical practice that when policies are updated or if they are done away with, they're modified, they're changed, we will let all BREC employees know ahead of time, or at least in time, and also make it available in writing on our intranet, which all BREC employees using your BREC credentials will be able to log into. So the following policies discussed, they're going to affect all employees. So please pay attention. Now, this is a matter of information only. There may be some additional procedures that are very specific to your position and or within your department. So in addition to what I'm going to go over with you, which is pretty generic for all BREC employees, make sure that you are also in tune to what's going on within your department. A code of conduct, very important. Every employee, and I'm not going to assume that because we are all adults and that we're all over the age of 18 or at least 18, that we know how to conduct ourselves responsibly, professionally, ethically, legally, morally. But our code of conduct spells it out for us. So our goal as BREC employees is to not do the opposite of what's in your HR employee handbook. It's there for your guidance. So if you have any questions about what you can do and why you can't do it, then it's very important that you read that document cover to cover. Our ethical conduct policy, again, applies to all employees, and we expect that everyone is going to behave themselves based on how BREC deems it necessary for us to operate business. We're also bound in the state of Louisiana by the Louisiana Board of Ethics, which you will understand a little bit more about that when you complete your ethics course. There is a list in the handbook of forbidden conduct. So just make sure that you're reading through that information and that you don't find yourself having committed any of those conducts that are listed there. Because I promise you, if it is prohibited and you choose to partake in it in your behavior, then you will be subject to some type of disciplinary action, and depending on how severe the infraction, it could lead to termination. Now, on the other side of that, you're a BREC employee, so we are all ambassadors of the agency. What does that mean? No matter where we are, whether we're on the clock or we're standing in a checkout line at Walmart, we represent the brand. So that means that in all times, in all scenarios, we are to demonstrate being considerate, being friendly, giving constructive feedback in our attitude toward our fellow employees, but not just within the organization, with our patrons as well. Remember, we are funded primarily through taxpayer dollars. So it is very important that as we are giving the customer service experience, we are meeting the expectations of all of those that we serve, that we remember the ambassadorship policy that you've actually already signed through your onboarding process. Your role is to make sure that you are living the Breck philosophy, that you are maintaining the code of conduct in everything that you do, the way that we behave, the way that we speak to one another. And if you have any questions, or if there are any areas of deficiency, then that's where the training and development department will come in to be able to provide those resources so that you can be as great as we know that you can. Every employee will receive an ID badge. You have to wear your badge at all times while you're on duty, while you are on the clock. So in order for you to get the badge, you will have to schedule an appointment with Human Resources. I'll provide you with the contact information, phone number of who to call at the end of this presentation so that you can get your ID badge taken, and then you will be issued your plastic badge. Now, depending on what your position is, you may or may not have the magnetic strip on the back of it that will give you access to swipe your badge into certain areas throughout the agency. Your first badge will be free of charge. Now, keep in mind, if you lose it, or if it has to be replaced, or if it is damaged, if it's lost, you will be charged $5 for the first badge that has to be replaced, $10 thereafter. And if your badge has administration building access, then it'll be $13 a charge for you. We are a substance abuse and drug-free workplace. So everyone has passed the drug and alcohol testing through the background checks. So you will not have to undergo any type of testing unless you are in an accident while you're on the job, if there is reasonable suspicion, or if your position is a safety sensitive position, meaning that you are required to drive a Breck vehicle or to operate heavy machinery, we prohibit the use of all illegal drugs. Any prescriptions that were not provided to you, that do not have your name on the bottle, and any alcoholic beverages. So make sure that, one, if you are called to have a random background check, that you participate willingly, and just know that if you do not, then it could be grounds for immediate termination. And obviously, if we find that you have abused substances or drugs or alcohol or any illegal drugs while on the job, then that will be grounds for immediate termination. Every employee has some level of a quote unquote uniform that is required. So depending on what your job position is and which department you are working in, you will be informed by your supervisor on whether or not you're required to wear an official uniform. If that is the case, we will provide it for you. Now, if your uniform becomes damaged or in ill repair, then make sure that you are notifying your supervisor so that we can exchange it. At all times, while you're wearing your uniform, it needs to be in the most pristine condition as possible. Remember, you represent the Breck brand, so we also have to look the part as well. If you're in the administration building, our dress code is pretty much business casual. Unless you're in the recreation department, then obviously if you are out and about in the field, then we won't expect you to wear a suit and tie. It really just matters what your position is and what your duties are for that day to determine how we should dress. But in any situation, all staff members should be neat and very well groomed. So make sure you're having that conversation with your supervisor so that we don't misunderstand what those requirements are. If you are issued any Breck property, such as a cell phone or maybe some electronic device or a computer or even equipment, Breck owns it. While it is in your possession, it is our responsibility to make sure that we are maintaining the functionality of it. If it breaks or if it is damaged, we are to immediately notify the appropriate individuals so that we can either get it fixed, repaired, or replaced. Treat it as if you paid for it, even though it is owned by Breck. Breck property is allowed for us to use it so that we can get our jobs done. So we want to make sure that everybody has the right resources so that you can do the best in your position. If you are issued a Breck approved cell phone, we do have a policy around it. So we provide cell phones or a monthly cell phone stipend for those individuals whose supervisors or department heads deem it necessary for you to have mobile communication while you are conducting Breck business. It is not an automatic that everyone either gets a Breck cell phone. It's an iPhone 8 at the moment, or either cell phone stipend. So if your supervisor says that it is necessary for your job, then you'll either have the option of the phone or the stipend. Just make sure that you're following all the rules and regulations, of course, while you're driving, that we're not using cell phones. That means no using it, no texting it, no dialing it. It's not, nothing is ever that serious where we could jeopardize our safety and the safety of others. So if you get a phone call, obviously make sure that we're pulling over or waiting until we're in a more safe environment to be able to answer it. There are guidelines and procedures around doing Breck business while also traveling. So there may be opportunities for in-state and out-of-state travel. There are guidelines that are set in our manual on exactly who gets to do it and how, what those procedures are. Whether you are driving a Breck vehicle or if you're using your own private vehicle or commercial transportation, very important that you read up on what the vehicle use and travel policy is to make sure that we're not breaking any of those rules. We also have a responsibility when we are using any of Breck's facilities or the parks. So we've established and maintained these areas all throughout the parish of East Baton Rouge to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be safe and that there's equitable access to every citizen and to all employees. So we are also governed by the same rules and regulations that one of our public patrons are. There's no charge for the general use of our park. So just make sure that we are following the guidelines and that if there are any restrictions or fees that are applied, that we are maintaining that appropriately as well. Our administrative policy and training policy pretty much states that every Breck employee is eligible to receive what they need in order to get their jobs done. So Breck will pay up to $250 per year for employees who are eligible for license fees or certification fees, memberships, or dues that have to pertain to you getting your job done. So whatever's in the best interest of the organization, as well as what's going to excel you into being able to get your job done. Now, training is available to every Breck employee. We now have a learning management system that has a plethora of all types of training in many different areas for different industries and different positions that is available to us in video on-demand courses in real time, 24/7. So if it is something that you're interested in, that is not mandatory, that is not assigned, you will have the same access to every Breck employee, regardless of whether or not you're a part-time or a full-time staff member. Now, there are specific trainings that will be required for you to get your job done, such as orientation, such as Louisiana governmental ethics or preventing sexual harassment. You will be very well informed of what those required trainings are, and then also to have access to those that are voluntary, that you're just interested in on your own. Now, some other policies that either you have read through the onboarding process or that you will be exposed to in your additional orientation task, they're listed here. All of this information and all of our policies are in the appendix of the employee handbook. So I cannot reiterate more than I already have, that it is your responsibility to read that document cover to cover. So today, we're going to cover benefits and some sexual harassment, workplace violence, and safety. You're still required to take the state mandated courses. I will go over IT, web, and social media requirements for you all, and there may be some additional trainings if it is finance related If you handle any type of cash to get your job done in your positions, then you may be assigned a cash handling course. If you are a supervisor, there are additional supervisory requirements. If you are in NeoGov, which everyone has access to, then I'll train you on how to log into NeoGov and how to access your courses. If you're in the recreation department, you may have RecTrack or any other courses that may be assigned by your supervisor so that you can get your job done. Our staff fund is voluntary. There is a form. It's a half sheet page that was in your orientation packet that if you're interested in joining the fund, as you can see here, you will have to contribute $3 per paycheck for a full calendar year in order for you to participate in the fund. It's a fun time. It is voluntary, meaning that this is outside of your requirement as a BREC employee. But what it allows for you to participate in is that in the sort of middle of the year, in the springtime, we would typically have a crawfish boil or a seafood boil where we as BREC employees come together, we let our hair down, we just enjoy each other's company. There are no kids that are allowed to attend these events because there are alcoholic beverages that are served. Towards the end of the year, in December, we would normally have a holiday party. Now, obviously, during the year 2020, the year of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were not able to facilitate any of our planned staff fund activities. Those members who were a part of the staff fund will be informed on where their 2020 funds are going to be allocated. But if you are interested beyond 2020, then make sure that you fill out that half sheet so that as we're planning for the year 2021, you can be a part of those activities. If you're not a staff fund member, you're still invited to join us. The cost will be $30 per person to attend, but attending allows you to be able to bring a +1. So totally up to you. It is voluntary. Please let us know if you have any questions, any comments, concerns. There are some responsibilities for you as the new hire to make sure that all of your onboarding paperwork is taken care of in human resources, that you get your ID picture taken so that you can get your badge. HR's number is 225-273-6430, or you can feel free to check with your immediate supervisor.